Plot summary of Bridge to Terabithia by Katherine Paterson. As summer comes to an end, 10-year-old Jesse Oliver Aarons Jr., who likes to be called Jess, spends every morning running through the fields behind his house in the small, rural town of Lark Creek, Virginia. He wants to be the fastest runner in the 5th grade when school starts again. Jess runs to get away from home, where he has to deal with a lot. His overworked mother, Mrs. Aarons, is always bugging him about his chores, and his father, Mr. Aarons, who works in Washington, D.C. and commutes every day, doesn't seem to like the person Jess is becoming. Jess also has 4 sisters named Joyce and Maybelle, Ellie, and Brenda. They irritate and anger him in different ways. When a new family moves into the rundown old farmhouse across the street, Maybelle, Jess's sister, hopes there will be a girl her age to play with. However, Jess soon realizes that the family's child is a girl his own age. Leslie Burke is a dirty, nosy tomboy. Jess is sad when he finds out on the first day of school that Leslie is in his class. She makes him even angrier when she wants to race with the boys at recess, and wins. Jess doesn't like how Leslie doesn't care about social rules, but he finds something beautiful in the way she runs like a wild bird. Jess hates 5th grade. The only good thing about his week is music class with Miss Edmonds, a beautiful hippie who helps Jess with his secret talent, which is drawing. Jess thinks that he is in love with Miss Edmonds. When Leslie and Jess sing together in music class, Jess starts to like the strange girl more. That afternoon, they ride the bus together, and Leslie tells them that her parents, Bill and Judy, are wealthy writers and intellectuals who have moved to the country to get away from the stress of living in Washington, D.C. Leslie hopes that her new life in the country will be full of exciting things to do. Leslie's classmates continue to make fun of and annoy her because she doesn't know how to act in social situations. She wears undershirts and cutoffs, says that her family doesn't have a TV, and talks about weird hobbies like scuba diving. Jess and Leslie also have to deal with the school bully, Janice Avery, who is a big 7th grader who scares everyone who gets in her way. Jess and Leslie sneak off to the woods one afternoon to get away from it all and do some exploring. Leslie says she wants to make a whole secret country and rule it with Jess. Leslie and Jess call the place they've found Terabithia after swinging across the creek behind Leslie's house on a rope swing and reaching the woods on the other side. Over the next few weeks, they put together a castle from scrap metal and stock it with food. Jess and Leslie spend all of their time at school together, and every afternoon they play in Terabithia and the sacred pine groves beyond. As time goes on, Terabithia becomes an even better place to get away from the stress of school and everyday life. Jess and Leslie go to Terabithia when they need to plan, like when they need to figure out how to get Janice Avery to stop bothering Maybelle, or when they want to get away from their overbearing families. Leslie gives Jess a set of paints, and Jess gives Leslie a puppy, which they name Prince Terrian and make the guardian of Terabithia. As Jess gets less and less happy at home, where something is always being asked of him and his parents treat his sisters better, he starts spending more time with the Burkes, who are fixing up their house and painting the living room gold. Jess gets used to being around the smart and creative Burkes, and he's proud that he can help out and work hard. When the golden living room is finished one afternoon, Leslie and Jess go back to Terabithia for the first time in weeks. Later, as Jess is falling asleep in his bed, his sister Maybelle whispers to him that she followed him and Leslie to their secret hideout and now she knows where they've been spending their afternoons. Jess tells Maybelle not to talk about Terabithia to anyone else. As Easter gets closer, it rains all the time over Lark Creek. Mr. Aarons is fired from his job, which makes Jess's family even more upset and desperate. Leslie has never been to church, so Jess asks his mother if she can come with them to church on Easter. Mrs. Aarons agrees, since Leslie is interested in going to church. Leslie is interested in the service, but she says afterward that she doesn't believe anything that was said. Maybelle tells Leslie that she will go to hell when she dies if she doesn't believe the Bible. Leslie and Jess laugh at the worries of young Maybelle. Every time Jess and Leslie go to Terabithia, they find that the normally dry creek bed has more and more water in it because of the rain. One afternoon, it is so fast and high that Jess doesn't want to cross it. He starts to dread going to Terabithia, which makes him feel bad and makes him worry that he's not good enough to be its king. Leslie doesn't mind going to Terabithia in the rain, so Jess doesn't want to tell her how nervous he is. During Easter break, the Aarons' phone rings on a stormy morning. Miss Edmonds is on the other end. She asks Jess if he would like to go to an art museum in D.C. with her for the day. Jess is happy to accept her invitation, but she doesn't bring Leslie with her because she wants to spend some time alone with the beautiful Miss Edmonds. The day is magical, and Jess, who has never been to an art museum before, looks at all the beautiful paintings with a somber joy. Jess is happier than he has been in a long time when he gets home, and he can't wait to tell Leslie all about his trip. But when he walks into his house, he finds his family sitting quietly at the kitchen table. They tell him that Leslie is dead. She was swinging across the creek and into Terabithia when she fell, hit her head, and drowned. Jess, who is upset, leaves the house and runs until his muscles scream on the back roads of the town. Mr. Aarons follows Jess in his pickup truck, and Jess finally lets his father catch up to him, pick him up, and bring him home. When Jess wakes up, he thinks that hearing about Leslie's death was just a bad dream. He goes back to sleep, excited for the next day when he can play with Leslie. But in the morning, Jess's father reminds him in a serious way that Leslie really did die and that he needs to find a way to deal with the loss. Jess's parents walk across the street to the Burke's house to say goodbye to Bill and Judy, and Jess goes with them. Jess is surprised by how emotional and expressive Leslie's adult family members are. He feels anger, fear, and denial as he watches them cry over his best friend, who he thinks belonged to him. Jess leaves the party, runs home, and gets the paints Leslie gave him for Christmas. He runs to the creek and throws the paints into it. Again, Jess quickly figures out that his father has been following him. As he shakes and cries, he lets his father hold him. Jess gets up early the next morning to do his chores, which he hasn't done since Leslie died. He goes to the creek to get some of his paints back, but all of them have been washed away. When he sees a big log washed up on the bank, he uses it to build a makeshift bridge across the calm but still high creek. In Terabithia, Jess makes a funeral wreath for Leslie, whom he calls his queen. Soon, though, he hears Maybelle's cries of pain coming from somewhere nearby. Jess goes to the creek and finds Maybelle stuck on the log. She is afraid to move forward or backward, so she can't move. Jess helps her get back across the river. Jess continues to mourn Leslie. His classmates talk about him behind his back and won't look him in the eye because they know he's been through a tragedy. Mrs. Myers, Jess's intimidating homeroom teacher, who he and Leslie used to make fun of cruelly behind her back, pulls him aside to tell him it's okay to be sad and to let him know that she's still sad about her husband's death. Jess feels bad about making fun of Mrs. Myers, and as he spends the day thinking about Leslie and how nice she is, he decides to destroy Terabithia. He thinks that he can't make the magic happen without Leslie. Jess has an idea as she helps the Burkes load their things into a U-Haul. They are getting ready to leave Lark Creek, where they moved for Leslie's sake. He asks if he can take some of the wood from the pile behind their house, and they say he can. They then give Jess a tearful farewell. Bill says that he would have liked to give Prince Terrian to Jess, but he can't because he wants to keep the dog as a reminder of his daughter. The next day, Jess starts taking pieces of wood to the creek so she can build a real bridge to Terabithia that works. Maybelle walks up to Jess at the creek as he is finishing the bridge and asks him what he is doing. Jess puts flowers in Maybelle's hair and tells her to walk across it. As she does, Jess points out all the Terabithians who have gathered to celebrate the arrival of the queen they've been waiting for.
About the author. Katherine Paterson's parents, who were Presbyterian missionaries and lived in Xinjiang, China, gave her the name Katherine Wammeldorf. Her father was a preacher who ran a boys' school in the area. However, when the Japanese invaded in 1937, the family had to move back to the United States. During the war, Paterson's family moved all over the American South, spending time in North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia. Since Paterson's first language was Chinese, this made him feel lost. Paterson grew up to love language, reading, and writing as she got older. In 1954, she graduated with honors from King College, a private Presbyterian college in Tennessee. Later, she went to Japan, and the things she saw and did there inspired her first book, The Sign of the Chrysanthemum, which is set in Japan in the 12th century. The book Bridge to Terabithia by Paterson was widely praised when it came out in 1977. The book won the Newbery Medal in 1978, and since then it has become a classic in children's books. Paterson also wrote Jacob Have I Loved and The Great Gilly Hopkins, which won the National Book Award. Paterson lives in Vermont and is the vice president of the National Children's Book and Literacy Alliance.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.